I'm a Luddite historian, but I'm not going to talk about the history at this point. Hopefully later in the programme we're going to discuss the historical antecedents of Luddism. I'm just going to talk briefly about the concept of neo-Luddism and what I believe that means. It certainly doesn't mean, as many opponents claim, that we're against all technology. That would be ridiculous. It would mean denying the very essence of the human species. Man, and I use that in a non-gender term, man, Homo sapiens, is in fact a social tool-making animal. We can't get away from that. We don't deny that. The question is, what kind of technology? And the common foundation of Luddites200 is the agreement that we're against kinds of technology which are hurtful to the commonality. And this quote actually comes from a Luddite letter of 1812. But the problem there is, what is hurtful to the commonality in this day and age? I mean, the Luddites in 1812, they could point to this machine and that machine and say, the introduction of this is damaging our community. But what do you do in an age like we live in, of global technology? Dave has already alluded to the idea that technology itself may be neutral, and the matter is, how do you use it? But you could say this going back right to the origins of technology. In fact, if you look at the basic technology, say a Julian hand axe from the Paleolithic period, you know, those beautiful triangle-shaped axes. I mean, you could use that for skinning an hippopotamus, or you could use it for bashing somebody's head in. So it is, to some degree, a matter of how it's used, but I want to argue that technology itself is inherently not a matter of use. It has its own inherent problems, which are on the whole negative. And to understand that, we've got to look at what is a tool, what is technology. Basically, a tool, obviously, is a means of extending human capabilities beyond their own biological limitations. It's a means of expanding human control over nature. But in the process of that, you're not only extending control over nature by making tools, you're also introducing relationships within human society itself. The tool actually goes beyond its actual use. You've got to consider the making of that tool, the ownership of that tool, and the exchange of that tool. And all these factors have got to be taken into account when you consider the impact of technology. And I would argue that in itself, technology is not only about expanding human power over nature, it is inherently about expanding human power of one human being or group of human beings in society over another group of human beings. Power is inherent in technology. That's one basic point I want to make. But how you control that power, I mean, the left in Britain, or in the world traditionally, has understood that if you take control of the means of production of tools, then you can expand ownership, expand democratic control, and in the future we can have a better relationship between human beings. But I would argue that using certain kinds of technology is inherently dangerous. And this is not just because that's my lifestyle choice or somebody else's lifestyle choice. It's not about one economic system being better than another economic system. It's a matter fundamentally of evolution. A crossroads as far as evolution goes. What kind of human beings do we want in the future? Is it going to be Homo sapiens, you know, intelligent human beings, or is it going to be Homo fabricator, man the toolmaker, man the technologist? And it's at this dangerous juncture in history we've got to try and decide which way we're going to go. So that's why I think neo-Luddism is so vital, because neo-Luddism questions the whole concept of technology itself. We want to introduce an all new paradigm about where human society is actually heading. And you've all seen these films and read the books, War of Man Against the Machine, fighting robots, fighting cyborgs and all this sort of business. But I'd argue that the impact of technology now is far more insidious. I'll just give a couple of quotes. These are by Herbert Reed, talking about the impact of technology on human beings. And he refers to the devitalising tyranny of the machine. He also mentions the alienation of sensibility, that is the inevitable consequence of mechanisation. These are subtle effects on human beings which are taking place day in, day out in the present technological system. And I'd argue that these are the real dangers, not robots and cyborgs taking over the world. It's the insidious effect on human beings which we see in subtle means. Technology, in fact, dictates people's behaviour, it's people's mode of thought, people's relationships between each other on a daily basis in very subtle ways. What is the alternative to this then? Some people say that neo-Luddites are primitivists. Now, I don't want to go back to living in mud huts and using flint tools. It sounds very nice, but I mean, I wouldn't do it and it's not practical. But we've got to have an alternative view of society, which does mean, as I say, a different approach to the idea of progress in itself. And one quote, and I'm using these quotes not as authority, but because these authors of these quotes say things far more better than I could say myself. And this is from William Morris in 1887. He says his idea of future society is a wish to keep life simple, to forego some of the power over nature won by past ages, in order to be more human and less mechanical, and willing to sacrifice something to this end. So I think that is, for me, is the goal of neo-Luddism. We've got to sacrifice something. We can't carry on with the technological juggernaut which we've unleashed. And I know it's not easy to put over to people as a whole, because most people, as you know, are hooked on technology one way or another. And even to challenge technology is a fundamental heresy in this society. So the basic task, as it of neo-Luddites, is just to put forward this different paradigm that there is, it is possible to progress without being on the treadmill of technology. It is possible to have a viable society that isn't dominated by technological ideas. As Charlie Chaplin said, you know, machine men with machine minds, and in this case it usually is a gender thing. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to raise the whole question of neo-Luddism. We're not all crackpots sending out bombs in the post and things like that. It is a far more broad-based movement. And a lot of people are Luddites who don't realise they're Luddites. And on the way around, there's people call themselves Luddites who aren't in fact Luddites. So hopefully we're going to discuss some of these questions this weekend. That's it, Dave.
Right, thanks.